Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Human SOS Show. We are welcoming you to episode 94. We're going to talk about dealing with stress related to job seeking. I know none of you are worried about any stress with job seeking, but just in case, thought we might address it this morning. Be sure and let us know where you're joining from, and we look forward to uh, having a time of engagement and moving forward. Anton, you want to kind of open us up?
Good morning, everybody. We're talking to a friend a few days ago, and she's gonna start looking for a job. And I just wanted to talk about this on the show because I was like, "Watch out! It's not all it's cracked out to be." And it's not like she was thinking it was gonna be great, but I went through job seeking twice over the last 8-9 months, and when I finished my second degree, I was like, oh, it's with an MBA, it's gonna be super easy to get a job. Like that's why I should get an MBA. And no, everybody these days has an MBA. So it just was painful, right? It was very demoralizing. I think I applied for like 200 different jobs when I first come out of school. Second time around, I was passively looking, and it was much easier. So step number one, look for a job while you still have a job. I would definitely start with that one, but that's not always controllable. I know that I'm kind of being joking a little bit about it, but how stressful do you folks think job seeking is? Is this something that you've gone through? What are some you know poor experiences that you may want to share? What kind of aspects of your human being affected by it, of your overall being. What about you, Kev? Have you had to look for jobs in a
Oh,
while?
yeah. About, well, when I left the education nonprofit, I was having to figure out what I was going to be when I grew up. And I not only looking for a job, but considering do I go traditional employment or do I start my own business? And having run a business previously, I knew the romantic notions of that were just that, romantic notions. So, yeah, and it is stressful. Just the fact that you have to be looking for a job is stressful in itself because so many of us are our value as a human is tied up in our job. So we're already dealing with that. And then, of course, you go out and look for jobs and find jobs you think you want, that you think you're qualified, and then you start getting the rejection. So it's a real snowball effect of excitement. Welcome, Rick and Hawk and Sharon and Zaid. Good morning. Glad to have you guys with us. Appreciate y'all always being there.
It's one of those things. I had to be honest. One of the hardest things about job seeking for me personally is I start playing the comparison game, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about how stress makes us want to compare to different things, and how it brings kind of that comparison cycle out of us. And but I'll sit there and I'll be like, look at my qualifications, look at all the stuff that I've done, and I'm seeing kids like fresh out of high school getting some feels like getting these jobs, and I'm like, why can't I get this job? This is just ridiculous. And I've had to, I remember our buddy Chris counseled me a lot, coached me on, looking for a job, and he was like, Anton, you have no idea the circumstances. You have no idea what is the reason that kid was brought on over you. You have
Mm.
no idea. Like you're taking it on as it's something against you, it's something bad, but you may be overqualified. And it's like it's so hard to wrap that thought around in my head because I'm like, well, if I have all these qualifications and I want this job, why don't you just give me this job? Like
Seems obvious.
shouldn't be your decision to say I'm overqualified. Like, and that's a tough one too because I was changing industries, right? So
Mm.
currently I made an industry shift and I went from industry to consulting. And even prior to that, I went from health industry into more business related, industry, and more into change management, things like that. And that's where I think that becomes a big deal is when you have a solid amount of experience and you're trying to go somewhere else. you're bound to have to take a lower level job because it's tough to go level for level if you don't have the industry experience that you're going into. Yeah, you may be a great leader. You may be able to do a lot of these things, which helps for sure. But to come in at that same level is very, very hard. So you're stepping down, and here's the challenge. That's when that overqualification can start to be scary. I know that I've scared a few managers away simply because they're like, I don't know how to manage this guy. Like, I don't know what I can add in value to them. And here I am thinking in my head that something's wrong with me. I am not doing something right. Like, it's something bad, where in reality it's good. It's just the manager's not experienced enough to handle a seasoned employee like myself.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of gets into Sharon's comment about ageism is a factor, and not just because of age per se, but because the amount of experience that we bring. And like you said, there are managers or leaders that are potentially intimidated by that. And so, Sharon goes on to say, in spite of experience, some people look at you as if you're too old to function. And especially when you have a hairstyle like mine, they have no idea how experienced you are, and they're not ready for the grave yet. I've had that happen to me, and it hurt like hell. So yeah, it's a one of the challenges that we're dealing with. And then, like you said, switching industries is its own set of challenges, because you may have so much understanding about it, and you may even have a tremendous amount of transferable skills, and but others cannot necessarily see that. They don't know how to look at that and consider it. In fact, I was at a conference last week and talking about how to look at hiring veterans, and most civilian organizations don't understand how to translate an MOS into or understanding an MOS to be able to translate it into usable skills. So a lot of different issues that create what we perceive as boundary, as restrictions and obstacles. Zaid makes a comment that he agrees that it's stressful, and I like that. Very unclean path. Yeah. There is no ABC, you're in the door type thing anymore. And Sharon had shared earlier, she knew it's stressful because she's going through it now. And I can experience a lot of stress, unfortunately. Been stressed because I want to seek employment in a certain location. I'm getting calls for every place else. And if you're lucky enough to get an interview, which is hard these days, you make sure you're prepared as you can be about the interview. So that's a whole nother stress. What do we say? How do we act in the interview? You ever face that one, Anton? Welcome, Eunice, by the way, and Atif. Thank you for being here.
Well, the interesting part is people brought up is ageism. I mean, that one you think was getting better, or at least it sounded like it was getting better. I don't think it's really that much better. I think that the problem with it is it's unconscious bias that causes it, right? It's people's inability or not willingness to face and say, you know what, I may be biased towards people that are in their end of their careers, right? I have these preconceived notions, and they don't really engage. You know what I mean? Like, really sit down and talk to people and say, why are you here? What do you really want to do? Look, you've done a lot of these great things. Because I think that's another one of those things that they're intimidated. A lot of these younger managers that may be intimidated to have them manage a more experienced hire. Yeah. And instead of sitting there and really taking the time to get to know them, taking the time to understand them, a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people just want to keep adding value. That's still the primary thing. Like, I still have a lot to give, right? And then I'm speculating because I'm far from that age. I'm probably halfway through my career, not even. But it's one of those things where people just want to add value. But people like me, younger generation, are going, well, I don't know how to deal with them. Their salary is going to be too much. They're going to retire next year, right? And the military was brought up. That's another unconscious bias, right? I was interviewing for this position, and they're like, Well, it's good that you have technology experience, right? With implementation of technology and different things like that. She's like, when it comes down to military leadership, applicants are a dime a dozen. Like that's what everybody thinks. Like all you're good for in the military is leadership development. Outside of that, that's it. I'm like, do you have any idea how much logistics are done in the military? How many, there's just so much different stuff that's done, but all these, subconscious biases, unconscious biases are happening and causing people not to get a chance.
Yeah, definitely. Rick shares a bit of his story. He says 10 years ago, I walked away from a stressful situation, went from a 70K job to 2 to 3 jobs to keep in the workforce. And I was told I was too old by a couple of employers at 53. Yeah, I feel your pain there, Rick, on that one. And I kept looking and found that this job that I've had for 10 years, thanks to an older person who hired me. So I guess that helps a little bit from the age standpoint, right?
It's sad that it has to be like that, but that's the truth, though. Unfortunately, that's what people have to do. We got some good questions from Atif, I think.
Okay, there he is. Okay. All right. How to deal with repeated rejections. Oh, that's a definite one. When people are offered jobs who do not deserve to be there, how to cope with this real or perceived unfairness that is so rampant in the world. Bill Gates also says life's unfair. Should we surrender to the fact, forget it, and strive and struggle at our optimum level? Age has become a barrier in recruitment, and young people are preferred over other people. In HR, at least in Pakistan, and also globally, reverse gender discrimination. Yeah, you got a good laundry list there. Anton, you want to take a shot at the rejection question?
Well, first one is there's two ways to look at a rejection, right? One is we can take the new generation route and just say it's not me, it's them. I'm great, no matter what anybody says, right? And this kind of blind, the right approach where we have positive communication with ourselves, but almost like a blinded one that we're just like, no matter what's externally going on, I'm great. No, that's not what I'm saying. We shouldn't do that. We should find balance between everything. On one side is you're great. On the other side is where can I get better? What can I find in that interview that I could have improved? And this comes back to an analogy or an exercise, whatever you want to call it, that Kev has he has a infographic on his channel about 3 buckets, right? So bucket number 1 is things that you directly control. Bucket number 2 is things that you influence. Bucket number 3 is things that are outside of your control, right? So anytime that you go through an interview, I recommend that you sit down and you run through that exercise and you sit down and you go, okay, the things that I could control, showing up on time, prepping my resume, dressing professionally, how I communicate, eye contact, friendliness, all those different things. Did I control those things? Did I put my best self forward? The answer is yes. Great. Move on. Then go to the next bucket and say, what do I influence? I influence perception of me. I influence the way that I present myself, the things that I emphasize in my resume, the story, the career story that I tell. And if I've done those things okay, right, where I feel like I've got this down, polished down to where it's coming out well and it's as intended, I may not control the outcome, but at least I've done everything I can to influence the right view of me or the right way that people perceive me. And the last one is things that we don't control. Perfect example. There's a lot of stuff that goes in there. Many times jobs get posted and an internal candidate is getting hired, right? So they have to post for HR's sake. They go through the interview cycle, they get the final interviews, but really from the get-go, there was already a candidate that even prior to the job posting happening was going to be the hire, but they have to go through the reps. And what are we doing when that happens a lot of times? We don't see it that way and we go, something's wrong with me. I didn't do something right. And that can be an endless cycle. So sitting there with that exercise and really hashing everything out, say, you know what? I did everything I'm supposed to do. The rest is not up to me. The rest is up to God. The rest is up to interpretation. The rest is up to luck sometimes, right? So that would be my recommendation as far as handling repeated rejections, because the other side is you could be getting rejected for the right reason, right? Maybe your resume is not done properly. Maybe you are not interviewing well. Maybe you're not telling your career story well. And by sitting there and analyzing all that really well, then applying proper steps to modify it, like, okay, I may have not done this well in the past, but now I nailed this. Now it's not on me. Now it's on circumstance.
And welcome, Shauna. Glad to have you with us. And let's see. Hawk makes a comment. Over yet? Oh yes, overqualified, or you can demand a high salary, so we choose someone else less qualified. And that's certainly a challenge related to being more experienced and age. That the assumption is that we are only going to take a job if we get paid maximum salary. Sometimes that's necessary, like you said, though, Anton. Sometimes at this point, our primary goal is just to stay active and have some employment, but more about giving back and so on. And Eunice echoes that many people are going through stress and anxiety. Definitely. As far as the rejection thing, to me, that one's a very hard one. And so I go back to a deeper root. There is we've got to identify our value outside of things like work, money, things of those sort, because we can influence some of it, but much of it we can't control. So why should we wrap our value up in that and let that become such an emotional thing for us, when the reality is that, like I said, our not getting a job is quite often nothing that we can control. And I think I find it interesting that I know that labor laws are designed to protect people and all, but when the companies advertise jobs that they've already planned to fill internally, it creates a real problem for others that are seeking jobs and have to deal with rejection unnecessarily. um, and so let's see. Rick, I'm sorry, Hawk says he went through the same thing 4 years ago. And I like Rick's comment, and that is that got to think outside the box in your skill set. We're more versatile than we think. Yeah, I think we need to, rather than depend on HR people, recruiters, hiring managers to see the transferable skills we have, that if we're really interested in a job, that we go and we look at what the tasks are or what the requirements are, and have it planned to say, you're looking for this. Well, I did those same things in this different setting, and identify those for ourselves, rather than depending on the hiring manager, whoever you're dealing with, to to find those things. I think that's a helpful tip.
And it's an interesting one because it makes me. There was an earlier conversation with value. It's one thing that, and this is maybe a little bit of a controversial opinion, but it's not the value that's the issue. It's not. I mean, sorry, it's not the salary that's the issue. It's painting our worth for the salary that this hiring manager perceives we may want. I've always argued that in sales when I was teaching sales, and with folks that haven't really done a lot of sales. And they're like, well, they're saying it's too expensive. They're saying it's too expensive. I'm like, no, they just don't see the value behind the product or a service that you're selling that's worth the money that you're trying to get. So if we're getting a value question or a value problem, it's not always the case. Sometimes you're truly, seem to be more expensive for the budget of the role. But oftentimes people will stretch that budget if they think you're worth it, which comes back down to painting your career story. It's how well can you explain what you did or connect those relevant skills, and how valuable to the employer does that is that perceived. And if it's not, then just the no amount of money is going to be worth it, because then you could try to go and lowball yourself and like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why are they going so low? Mm-hmm. So the money's not always an answer. It's finding better ways to tell that story. So to deal with that, hire somebody. I've seen people get such better salaries, such better jobs because they hired a career coach I'm trying to remember what is her name. She's always on LinkedIn, but God, I can't remember. But I'll have to double check. Remember her name, but you may know her. She's really good at career stories. She's just that's her thing. She works with people on how to tell your career story, and she helps people transition by humanizing skills. It's not just about here's my skill. It's here's the story behind this. Here's the accomplishment that came from when I did something like that. Here's why I'm proud of it, right? And really telling these things as a story versus just a list of accomplishment or a list of tasks that you've executed. And when you do that well, then your value significantly goes up.
Zaid comments that he's dealing with the internal hiring challenges, and that's hiring internally can be tough. Theoretically, it should be easier because you're a known entity, but the problem is hiring internally is you have other factors that come into play that aren't necessarily relevant to your qualification, but are a part. So yeah, that's a struggle as well. In terms of biases, I thinking that what you have to understand going in with most companies, unfortunately, is biases in terms of a few things, such as gap years, where people were not employed for whatever reason, especially ladies that stay home with their children for a time and then come back, and that's seen as a negative, unfortunately. And the another one is education bias. They have jobs that they automatically disqualify you if you don't have a degree, and that's unfortunate because you may have all the requisite knowledge, experience, and ability, but because you don't have the checkbox of a certain degree or the like, you get disqualified. And so there's some biases that you need to consider and look at how you can overcome them. Just like we talk about the transferable skills, well, look at transferable knowledge and identify. If it says, okay, you need a bachelor's in business. Well, if you've run a business or if you've successfully run a home, well, you take that knowledge and understanding and identify it and say, yes, I don't have this degree, but I've done this and this and this that are part of being having a degree in business. I have organized a business. I have set up the finances. And so again, some biases that we have to be proactive to anticipate and address.
Another thing about job seeking that I think is it become a challenge because everybody's like it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? Yes. It's all about networking. It's all about and it's absolutely true. Like my current job that I just started 2 weeks ago, I got because I had an internal referral. I've always been qualified, but that just made all the difference in the world is just to have company trust that, you're a good candidate. They're just willing to give you more of a chance. Your resume has more of a chance to land on the desk of the right decision maker. That's the thing about it. But the stress about it, like we said, it's just some people are not great networkers. Some people are, it's not even that they're not great networkers. They're just terrible at asking for help. They're terrible at reaching out and saying, hey, like I'm struggling. Like I see you work in this company and you have an opportunity. You mind putting a good word in for me? So the person that ended up referring me, I've never met them in my life. I only know them because they had a same teacher 3 years prior to me, and they stayed connected with them and I commented on a LinkedIn post, and then they just started chatting and they said, what are you looking for? And blah, blah. But that's stressful in itself for some people to ask for help. So coming back to how to handle that is watch your internal monologue. When you're struggling with networking, I always try to tell people, what story are you telling yourself in that moment? Are you saying that you're bugging somebody? Are you saying that, you're not worth their help or whatever it may be? Try to reframe it into a more positive. Think about, this is something that like gift giving has always been hard for me, or gift getting, I should say. Gift getting has always been hard for me until a client told me, Anton, you got to give me an ability to give because I enjoy giving. By you trying to be like, oh no, I don't need gifts, I don't need this, I don't need that. Yeah, you may seem humble and modest and like you're not greedy, but at the same time, you're taking ability away and opportunity to help from me. Many people, most people out there, they will jump at an opportunity to help somebody. They really will. Just have to ask about it the right way. And if you get 1 out of 10 that are not happy about it, it's 1 out of 10. Why are we focusing on that one versus the nine others that do want to help? And then we stop doing it because of that one. So just networking's big, and we got to have the right model of around it.
And Hawk shares an experience, and it's unfortunately more common now than ever, is that had a recent interview and interviewed by a person who was temporarily in the position, and comment maybe might have even been an applicant themselves. And with the high rate of turnover right now, you may be starting out at a disadvantage because the person that is doing the job is not happy being in that job. They had to fill in for somebody else and may not even be as qualified to do their job hiring. Or so, yeah, there's some definite challenges out there that are compounded by everything um, going on with us in the world. And Paul, welcome, Paul. Glad to have you. Paul's a neighbor here in Atlanta. He says it's a good point. Everything on your resume should be a story that you're happy to tell. Yeah, that's a good point. Write your resume in such a way that when you come to provide the narrative that goes with it, you're pleased to share it. That's a good one, Paul. And one of the things that I go to people come and they say, I really want to work for this company, but they're treating me badly as an applicant and all that. And at some point I have to say, if they treat you badly as an applicant, do you really want to work there? Because that's going to go to the culture that is there. And my question would be, do they treat people as humans? And if they don't, look out. That's a big red flag.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we need to be more patient when we're looking for jobs and trust in the bigger vision. But sometimes it's desperation. Sometimes people need employment because they got bills to pay, they got mortgages to pay, kids to take care of. So it's tough. It's tough to be really long-term thinking when we're just trying to solve an immediate, bleeding wound or correct a bleeding wound. But that is absolutely the right way of thinking. You have to think long-term. You have to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture will say, yeah, maybe I really want this role, but this company is not the right company. So it's a blessing that I didn't get that job. But that's hard. That's the logical way of thinking about it, right? We talk about the brain on the show a lot. But when we're stressed out from employment, seeking, our logical brain is not super functional. It's more of that survival brain that's firing on all cylinders and making us, not be able to look and think logically and look into the future. It's all about, I just need a job right now. Give me a job. I'll take anything. And then 6 months into it, we're like, why did I do this? Why did I get into this? And now I jump into a job. Now it's on my resume. And now worse, I look like a job hopper. And there's nothing wrong with that unless you are already, kind of categorized in some other negative category, whether it be ageism, whether it be overexperience, and now put job hopper right next to it, that fear, and that's going to be a problem. So sometimes a no is a blessing.
Yeah, that having those combinations, almost a perfect trifecta to never get a job. Well, I have to put a plug in here, folks. One way to help manage the stress related to job hunting, because it is stressful, okay, it even under the best circumstances, but if we've identified other stressors in our life, such as doing our assessment, and we have minimized or managed better the stressors in other areas, then the stress of looking for a job is not so big. It's not the last drop in the bucket that causes it to overflow. So if you're looking for a job and all, one of the things right now might be to take the stress assessment and consider what are other stressors that are going on in our life, and address those and reduce our overall stress so that the stress of job hunting doesn't push us over the edge, so to speak.
Such a good point, Kevin. I love that you brought that up. Control what you can control. It's coming back to, that thing we just talked about, the exercise. And job stress is not the easiest to go after that you can control. Now, there's things that, like I said, you can do. One example is setting a target for how many jobs you apply per day. Right? Outside of that, you may not be able to control a whole lot of things until you get an interview, until somebody responds, right? Your resume is polished up. You got that done. Okay, check. I've applied for 10 jobs in a day, whatever is the right number. Some jobs are harder to apply for than others, but whatever's the right number for you, you've done that check. And then if you're religious, it helps out to just remember it's not all in your control. Surrender, and God's got you covered, but do the work. And if you do the work with the right time, the right opportunity will come up. But in the meantime, look at other stuff. Nutrition, that's one thing that's common, right? When we're job seeking, we're constantly getting rejected, right? So what do? We go to comfort food. We go to find comfort in our nutrition. And usually that's not the answer, right? That takes our mind off, makes us less sharp, make us more stressed because we're putting toxins in our body that are, that are causing problems. But we don't often think that way. We don't associate nutrition as a source of stress, but it 100% can be. And we get into a really bad cycle with trying to, get stressed, not sleep well because we're not eating well, whatever it may be. Then it causes us more stress from job seeking. So we want more comfort food. And we keep doing this back and forth until we burn out. So there's many different things, relationships, right? If you need to maintain your relationships better while you're doing that, focus on that. Give it some time. Don't abandon your relationships so you can go full-time look for jobs, and then that stress is eating you apart.
Yeah. In fact, one of the values of faith and being in a faith community is the mental and emotional support that you can get. In fact, it isn't real common these days that churches will have job seeker groups to encourage and support each other and learn things together to help, and so on. And Rick makes another comment, talks about language bias, not just language, but dialects and different things. It's bordering on some of the biases and of ethnicity and things like that. But those are certainly potential factors in what we deal with. And so, I was trying to think that in addition to dealing with your overall stress level, another is to, like you said, Anton, limit what you put yourself through. I've known of people that are in a stressful job situation, and they then start looking and applying to 5-10 jobs a day. And when you think, okay, well, that's good because you're improving your odds, but just think about that. If you're going after 10 jobs a day, how many rejection notices are you going to get, and what does that do to you? And that becomes a real issue. So managing it well may mean, hey, I'm going to apply for one job a day or whatever, but because realizing that potentially you're setting yourself up for a rejection, whether it's deserved or not, doesn't matter. Just you need to manage all those processes that so something we really need to think through there. Let's see here. Sharon shares a comment. I truly believe that with all my heart because I did see that happen. God don't like ugly. I got to look back and see what the context of that. Rick, I'm sorry, Hawk was talking about karma. So one of the other things that let's think about some proactive approaches. My friend Jimmy Collins, in his book Creative Followership, makes a brilliant suggestion that, and most people are nervous to try, but it is brilliant. And that is, before you take a job, say, I would like to interview my future leader or manager before I'm willing to take the job, and and take time, because you know statistically more people leave jobs over who they're reporting to than what they're doing or salary or other things, and you may get some funny looks by making such a request, because that's a rare thing, but better to go in knowing what you're looking for and being confident enough to take those steps, rather than doing, sometimes I think we do job seeking like we do dating. We put on all our best and smell our best and look our best and tell all our best stories, and go through that process, and they do the same thing. And then after you've been dating a while, or after you're married, all of a sudden you realize, well, there's more to this story than this well-dressed person that's on their best manners all the time. There is more to it. And so don't treat this like a dating relationship. Treat this like a work relationship that you can live with. And so really be ready to ask the questions. Well, I don't know. Do your mom and dad get along if you're dating? Well, does your future manager get along with his manager? I don't know. Different things to really understand what you're getting into.
It's an interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin, because that's the right thing to do, right? We want to. I think it's motivational interviewers or something like that, and then it's not the right term. I can't remember, but it's where you're coming in with a mindset that they need you and you don't necessarily need them, right? It's a subconscious thing that we project out there. Our value is much higher, but that's not usually how it goes for job seekers, unfortunately. And it's not that easy. It's not that simple, because you've been rejected so many times. The stress makes us go, I just need a job. I just need anything at this point. And we project that out. We project that to our hiring manager, to the interviewer, and they see, okay, this person is desperate. They're hiding something. It just seems too weird. Instead, versus coming in and acting like, I don't need this. I'm just here to explore. I'm seeing what's going on. That's why looking for a job is so much easier while you have a job, because that desperation of necessity doesn't really show through as much. But even if you are looking for a job without a job, that's still the mindset you want to try to take. And that's why you can't burn yourself out looking for jobs, because you will always seem desperate when you are burnt out.
Well, and go back to one of the areas that I harp on regularly. So I guess I'll harp on it again today some. And that is, prepare yourself to go in and have the confidence in the direction you're going, to be able to say, hey, I'm interested, but I need to see if you're going in the same direction that I need to go. And so having clarity of your vision and mission and values is a really important piece to have in place, because that helps you to say, my vision takes me in this direction, but where you guys are going is not that direction. Or, my values say these and your company values say this. Ultimately, I'm going to have conflict. And when you can be prepared in that fashion, you can then have a better chance of really understanding what you're getting into, and let them know. Say, I had my son looking for a job, and he went and looked at a company, and the company, I forget, they had something. Oh, it was around some moral, ethical things, and they were very clear that their where their value stance was. And my son said, I'm concerned that if this is a priority to you as a company, I have a conflicting priority, and that's just not going to work, because then I'm going to have another problem. And so I was very proud of my son, the fact that he had identified that and went in knowing it, and even voiced it to the company, because you ask the question, is this a priority for you? If it is, it's not going to work for either of us. And this company appreciated the honesty. And so, yeah, work on your vision, mission, and values. Have it clear in your own head before you jump into it, so that it's clear for both of you, because you getting in and being miserable is bad for you. It's bad for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like Dimitri agrees with you, and clarity of our mission, vision, and values is a must when considering where to work. No, that's where that long-term vision comes in. We have to have that versus just jumping on the first thing that we want, kind of that conversation we just had. Absolutely.
Yeah, and welcome, Dimitri, by the way. Glad to have you. Let's see. Got some more comments here from our folks. What Zaid was sharing is that I think what you're describing is behavioral interview. And I think whether the company approaches it as a behavioral interview, we should make it a behavioral interview. Another tool to maybe help is there's an organization out there that I came to know about called Jobtimize. And there is significant evidence that your behavioral patterns are a better predictor of your success in jobs than your education, your interest, your skill, your experience. And so having a behavioral conversation in regards to job is important. And if you go to jobtimize.com, you can actually take an assessment, and they have done profiles of jobs on ONET, which is a U.S. Department of Labor organization, and they have identified behaviors that predict more success in given jobs. So it's another tool to use. Again, the key, though, is if you're going to consider behavioral questions about it, you need to understand your own behaviors. And a lot of people don't understand their own behaviors. They don't understand their own processing. So a good preparation for it also is some of the assessments like DISC and Myers-Briggs and Strength Finders. And while you're doing this process, really seek it out and see what are those behavioral patterns that you have that will help you understand better what you're looking for. I work in a skilled area with young people. And one of the things I say, knowing quite often the answer is, do you want to sit in a corner office and type on a computer or talk on the phone all day? Is there enough money to pay you to do that all day? And they'll think about it a minute and they'll go, no, not really. So you have to consider what are your priorities in terms of money versus quality of life, or things like that. So
all great points. I think Hawk was asking you Jobtimize, how do you spell that?
Okay, let me type it in. I'm gonna do it on my phone, because if I do it in the on the stream, it doesn't go out to everyone. Bear with me, I'm a slow typer. Okay, there you go. And yeah, go check it out. It's free. You can take the assessment for free.
Is it JIB or JOB?
Oh, sorry. It is JOB.
I was like, Jibtimize. I mean, maybe. Could be.
Getting into the marine side of things there. No, it's job. I have bigger fingers than I have keys.
Hawk's asking John Leinart if one of us has taken his free test. I have not.
I have not. No, I'm not familiar with him. And you want to bring my son here? Yeah. Sometimes I've thought about sharing some of their experiences. They have some interesting ones. So let's see. Hawk makes a comment. Wish it was possible to share pictures in the chat. It just started snowing here, so I'll go outside and do some barefoot training soon. and that's what that is related to what you talked about, controlling what you can, your internal response. And again, as we do job hunting, we don't need to be haphazard about it. We need to be intentional. And so considering these different parts, and as we can plan, that means even taking breaks from job hunting. And I know that's hard because, like Anton was sharing, sometimes we're desperate to get some money coming in. And I appreciate that. But if your bills are paid and making okay money, but you're miserable, how well is that going to go? So something to consider there. Welcome, Nestle. Glad to have you with us. Yeah, Zaid says that I shouldn't talk about my typing, that it might be a pet impediment to getting jobs. So I'll keep that on the down low. So yeah, again, at the end of the day, be intentional. Really consider what you're going through and getting a help. There are a lot of great people that can help you consider your career and see things that you can't see for yourself, and it's a great value to consider.
That's about all I got on this topic. I don't want to necessarily keep beating a dead horse, but at Hawk's point, ground yourself. That's something that we all must do. Ground yourself in the moment, ground yourself in the present. Don't let that mind focus on the rejection of the past or be anxious about the possible rejection of the future. Try to stay focused on the present. Remind yourself of your values. Ground yourself in nature. Ground yourself in snow if you have to. But definitely a good advice, Hawk.
Yeah, and don't let money, jobs, those things define your value, because your value is already there and it's established. Those are just incidental things. And I encourage you, if you're struggling with the job search, consider faith, because faith can make a quite a difference in support. And Anton's laughing at Zaid's comment that the horse is dead already. Big thing is take away some encouragement and use some tools to help. Be intentional. Take our stress assessment. Doesn't cost you anything. Maybe give you an insight into an area you can focus on to reduce your other stress, so that job seeking is not such a big stressor. And we really hope that give you some things to think about and take away to be encouraged, and do give people around you the opportunity to support you, because yes, I'm like Anton, I'm better at giving than getting, but I have to remember that when I refuse to get something from other people, I'm robbing them of a blessing. So don't do that to people. There's people around you that want to be an encouragement and hope for you. So we will be back next Tuesday. Hopefully, Anton and my schedule is settling down a bit, and I think we can get back in the rhythm again, and we'll decide what the next topic, or if you guys have something that you consider a topic you'd like to talk about, throw it in the comments, and we will certainly consider it as a possibility for next week's. Thanks, everyone. God bless. Have an amazing week. We will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, folks.